Hey, everybody, welcome to the encouraging word for the day. And we hope that this has been encouraging to you. This is our fourth conversation. Kenneth Grizzell, preaching minister here at Greenwood Park, and Terry Daniels, who is the pastor at Transformation Christian Center. Terry and I, a passion that we had before the pandemic and before any of the things that are happening in our nation right now are happening, have the same passion that brought us together, and that is of raising up generations, or as the class that I'm trying to lead with the parents, a legacy, if you will, leaving that legacy of believers. And that passion awakened in me when we're going to be reading about this in the next maybe a week or two, a month, maybe next month, I guess. We'll be reading about Hezekiah. And it came when I was reading about Hezekiah one time, and Hezekiah, who's known as a good king. In fact, it even says that no king was as good as Hezekiah. But at the end of his life, after begging for God to give him 15 more years, and God granted it, Babylonians, who were not an issue yet, they were just a upstart city or nation, they came in, and Hezekiah shows them everything. Isaiah the prophet comes into him and says, "What did you show him?" He said, "I showed him everything." And then Isaiah says, and I may be missing a word or two here, but Isaiah says, well, you shouldn't have done that. As a result of that, your children are going to be taken as slaves. They're going to be, taken in chains, and they're going to be prostitutes, and they're going to be servants. And Hezekiah's response it really made me angry, but it awakened a passion in me. It showed me what this is all about. Hezekiah's response is what many times our response has been. His response was, at least it won't happen in my life. Sure. That's his children and his grandchildren, man. Wow. At least it won't happen in my life. And I think that's been the sin of the church, of the older generation, of which I'm getting in that generation. It's easy to get in, this is the way we do it. This is the way it's been. Or the younger generation, they're just, we just like write them off. We just write them off and say, well, I won't have to deal with that in my lifetime, but your children, you will, and your children will, and all that. And that's kind of what Hezekiah was saying. It's not going to happen in my lifetime. And have we not missed the whole point of living on this earth, if that's our attitude? If my life is so insignificant, however many years I live on this earth is so insignificant that I'm content to just have everything the way I want it. And I'm just going to say it. Bleep me if you want to hell with with my children and my grandchildren. That's our children and grandchildren we're talking about. Absolutely. And so we talked about that one time, about how important this is to get this right. And my life has meant nothing if there's not something carried forward by the next generation. A fruitful life doesn't involve wealth. It doesn't involve the things the idols really that we've pursued. It doesn't involve education. A fruitful life, and this is something that they hear ad nauseum here at Greenwood Park, is our life. Our race is not a marathon, it's a relay. My life, at the end of my life, I should be running in full sprint, handing the baton to the next generation. And if my life has meant anything, then the next generation starts where I left off. And leave me in the dust. And then my life has meant something. So I think of somebody like Martin Luther King Jr.
I think I have the privilege of sitting in a couple of seats in Bowling Green. The one being at the Chamber of Commerce, as the VP of HR. And we publish a magazine every year that is distributed around Bowling Green. It's used as a tool to promote all the great things that we have been blessed with. Economic development here, school systems, educational systems, banking. We are just blessed in Bowling Green. That's one seat that I sit on. But then there's another seat that I sit on, which is the Foundry Christian Community Center, which is a preschool, and it's in an impoverished area of Bowling Green in the West End. And as I work with the Foundry and I look at the magazine, I see that there's nothing in the magazine about the Foundry. But as we educate those children, our goal at the Foundry is to be with them from cradle to career.
Mm.
How do we affect an entire generation?
Mm.
And it's a long-term plan, not short-term. So if we're going to affect and pass the baton, as you just stated, then I've got to understand I'm starting over here in this preschool area, in an impoverished area where I'm working with the child. I'm working with the parents. I'm working with the community. And I'm building it up. So guess what? As the West End comes up and Bowling Green is still Bowling Green, how much better does Bowling Green look when we can talk about the great things we did in the West End, one child at a time, and affected generations for a long time? Because this is generational.
Yes.
We've been handed what we have. But as we talked about in yesterday's discussion, how do we embrace it? How do we take this on and say we're going to be the generation that changes it?
Amen.
Someone's got to.
Yes.
And it might as well be us.
Absolutely.
And I'm with you. I'm saying let's begin to pray about how do we go from cradle to career with every individual and stay with them. And guess what? Are they going to make mistakes along the way?
Yes.
Absolutely. But we're going to stay with them because you know why? That's what God does with
Amen.
us.
That's right. That's the truth. And I tell you, that's kind of what my wife and I are passionate about. Is we are passionate now at this stage of our lives to train parents here.
Oh, wow.
To start training them here on how to do this with their children. How to, and it kind of got interrupted. And I was going to do a video a week, and guys, count this as the video, okay? I have not, because honestly, we weren't prepared for the changes in our world and in our lifestyle for doing online services and how much time that was going to take to do the things that we're doing right now. And so my good intentions were amiss. But our goal with that was to train them and how to teach their children how to stick with it and how to be strong and to understand that their children are going to mess up. And that comes from the fact that we had three children, three individuals, all three of them. Anyway, I shouldn't say that. But we did not have easy time. And there were times that we felt like we don't know what we're doing, which was pretty much all the time. But what we did was we prayed the priestly prayer over them, and still do every day, our children and our grandchildren. We relentlessly handed our children to God every day. And just to train parents now to teach their children to talk about it when they sit at home, when they walk along the road, when they lie down, when they get up, the Shema. What sets the Jewish people apart from all other people is the Shema. You know, if you think about it, nobody's been more oppressed. I mean, Hitler tried to completely stamp out their whole race. So has Babylonians, and so has many people, even in the Crusades. I mean, this has happened, but they keep moving forward, and there's this heritage, and the heritage is there because they talk about it when they sit at home, when they walk along the road. Even secular Jews still talk about that and still can share that story, and that's what sets them apart. And we could learn from God's people who, at least, even though many times have kind of lost their way in pursuing God, yet they're still blessed because of those principles. How much more if believers in Christ can embrace that principle? And we start at the youth, because one of the reasons why I'm so focused on parents is not that I'm not doing the opposite of Hezekiah and giving up on this generation, but it's hard to teach people that have done things a certain way. But if we start from childhood,
Yes.
and that's just the way it is, and that's what's going to happen with this. I mean, not that there's not changes that have to happen in our nation, but ultimately, somewhere down the line, we've got to change the reality. And isn't that part? You think that's part of what's going on with the riots and the peaceful protests, which that's what I want to give credit to, but also even among people, maybe a younger generation crying out, somebody fix this thing. I mean, I've heard about this. I'm experiencing this. Can we be they want to be the generation that fixes it.
I use the example from time to time, just in trainings that, there's a lady that's in my church that owns a daycare. And I use her from time to time. I said, imagine what would happen if all the babies in the daycare start crying and the daycare worker starts crying. Everybody's in trouble. Someone has to be the adult in the room. And when you talk about passing the baton, we are the adults in the room. Yeah, there's a young group, there's a young crowd that's coming behind us, but we're the adults in the room. We're carrying the baton now, whether we want to or not. Someone has to be the adult in the room and acknowledge the realities and say, here's where we're going. I guarantee you, in your home, you and your wife, in the middle of a storm, you gather the children and you say, we're going in this room. What if you would have followed the children? What if you would have followed the children? It's been chaos and panic. Someone has to be the adult in the room. And I believe that belongs to us. So I'm saying let's embrace it.
Praise God.
And take this on and be the generation to change the game.
Amen. Okay, we're going to do one more session. So join us tomorrow, and we will just continue this conversation. It's not going to be the end of the conversation, but hopefully it will help us get engaged in this and, be the generation.
Yes.